and he had access to heaven and hell. So he would go into heaven and hell, and he would talk to the spirits in both those places, and then he would come back and he would write about what they were like. And what Van Dusen and I both saw was that what he was saying about these evil spirits matched exactly what we were seeing with the voices of schizophrenics. So both of us are going, well, maybe it's the same thing. So we started poking around in the heads of schizophrenics in different ways, where I was challenging and trying to destroy them, and he was trying to make friends with them. And then he wrote about what he saw when he was trying to make friends with them. And at some point he went, well, I think I've learned everything I could about them, where I was still bringing stuff up. And I would send him that stuff, and we decided, well, we need to let people know about this. I mean, people need to be awakened to this. He was retired at that point, and we started writing a book, but then he had a fast-moving cancer, polished him off once we finished the third chapter. So he wanted this information out so badly that he wrote until he could no longer push the keys on the keyboard. That's how bad he wanted this information out. And I told him I'll get it out one way or another, and I'll get it out. So that's what Van Dusen. He's a clinical psychologist.
Great. Okay. Yeah. That brings us back on track then. Yeah. We're talking really about these cases now, which reflect the characteristics. Yeah.
So I asked him, how many voices are you dealing with in this session? Okay. So last time it was 3. This time it's 2. So 1 left. I said, what happened to the third one? He said, I don't know. He's been gone now for a while. Where'd he go? So I'm like, where'd he go? That's your question. Where'd he go? We want to know. We probably want to know. He said, I don't know. But like I said, the weaker voices drop out first, and they drop out successively from weakest to strongest, and the strongest ones were last. And I told this guy the story about another inmate, and the room crackled with electricity when the voices got angry with me. Asked him if the voices ever did anything like that to alter physical reality, and he said yes. They told me that this other inmate was going to get to know him, and that then he was going to get into a fight with him. So the voices are saying this specific prisoner on the yard is going to get to know you, and he's going to assault you. All right. So I asked him, did that actually happen? And he said, yeah, the voices told me twice that this would happen. And I said, how did the fight start? He said, did he just come up to you and attack you? He said, no, I was in the bathroom just after taking a shower. My hair was soaking wet, and I was whipping it back to get the water out. And the water from the cone flew backwards just as this guy walked into the bathroom. He said the water hit him in the face. And he said, I didn't know he was there. I splashed him by accident. And the guy opened the faucet and splashed water on him, and then attacked him and hit him in the head. He said, eventually I beat him down, but the voices were warning me that this guy was going to attack me. Was more evident that they have special powers that they could use in my behalf to protect me while I'm in prison. And that was common, because what prison guards find out very quickly is that these guys are supernaturally strong. They are much stronger when they're irritated than the average inmate. And I told several stories about that. One prisoner that they put a quarter's pepper spray on, they stung him with a stun gun.
We brought that up in the last show, so you can hear the whole story in there.
Yeah, so they're supernaturally strong in prison. The guards, it's not long before they realize you don't mess with these guys. You don't be twerking them. He said, well, how long after the voices told you that that you were going to get in a fight with this guy did it actually happen? He said 2 weeks. I said, how long did the fight last? He said, about 4 minutes. I said, what happened next? He said, we fought and stayed enemies for a while. For a long time, I was wondering if the ordeal was over or not. I didn't know if I had to continually be watching for this guy coming up from behind me and getting me. And he said, the voices came a couple of times, a couple of weeks after the fight, and told me this guy was going to come back and apologize, but that would take a while. He said the voices told me that someone in his family had died and that he was upset. At that time, I was wondering if the issue was over or if I had to continue to watch out for him. So the voices came and volunteered this information. They told me that there would be no more trouble out of him, and told me not to hold my breath and wait for an apology, but that the issue was over. He said that the guy approached him some 5 months later and apologized. So this is one of several reports where the voices knew stuff that the patient themselves didn't. So again, these are energetic entities that operate in the energetic universe where there is no time, there is no space, there is no material. They know stuff that the patient couldn't know. George came to that conclusion one day where the voices were telling him that somebody knew his password on his computer. So he went to a friend and he said, change the password. So his friend changed the password in another room. And George said the voices told him that they changed the password to password. So he went in there and he goes, did you change the password to password? And he said, yeah, how'd you know that? The voices had told him that. So they know things that people don't know. I mean, where generally where the loot is hidden, where to hide. But it's all for a negative purpose. It's like a drug addict, he wants more drugs. He's happy if he gets more drugs at a good deal. So the voices for them were like, hey, that's a good thing. I get more drugs. I remember one where he went into a bar and it was in Tucson, a chick like a ship. And there were strippers in there. And the voices, he was looking at the women, and there was one he was kind of attracted to, but the voices were saying, no, go get that one. It's that one. You want that one. So he took up with her, and he said she liked to be strangled while she was having sex. So, you know, the voices loved that. So if he was strangling her at the same time and she passed out, he thought he killed her. You know, so he was shocked until she regained consciousness. And he goes, well, I'm never going to do that again. So they do stuff like that too. You know?
Yeah, someone's just put in something that's quite interesting, actually, as a topic, a point to bring up. Can intuition be one of these voices? Can people mistake intuition for these voices? Because I think that's quite an interesting point, because a lot of people who do this channeling, they don't know what they're picking up. But I think intuition is more of a kind of, it manifests itself almost physically if you are tuned into something. It's like intuition generally means that it's something good and it's a right decision to make. But what we're talking about is something that is counter to your own good, which you're being kind of coerced into doing.
Right. It's way different from intuition. You know, you'll have an intuition that these things are bad. You know, the intuition is you shouldn't listen to them. That's coming from your spirit. That's coming from the positive forces. These things are after your thinking processes. You know, they're trying to take over how you think.
Yes, Chris, also, your other question was, do the voices talk to each other? We just covered that. I don't know whether you've just come in, but we did actually mention that they seem to talk to each other within one subject, but they don't cross over into other people's voices. Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah. And the worst is when there's some patients that have hundreds of them. They all scream at them all at the same time. That is devastating. I think
that's probably people's perception of what this is about, because you kind of get that reflected in movies, you know, when they kind of portray people who are suffering from voices. It's usually loads of them screaming at them in an uncontrollable and indecipherable way.
Right. You know, and that's not real common. You know, but periodically you run into a patient who says, I have hundreds of them. You know, those are the worst.
How do they know there's hundreds of them? Have they all got different accents, different personalities?
I guess. You know, I guess. I'm not quite sure. They're able to differentiate them. And sometimes they get names.
That's really interesting, because you see, this is a very fine point here, because if the voices are you and they manifest as your own thoughts, how can they be differentiated against? They must have different personalities or different patterns.
Yeah, I think
that's
they have
an interesting thing, isn't it?
They have different personalities of sorts. But you know, some patients have a hard time differentiating them, and some are very clear that they're, you know, who they are, what they do, which one is talking, and what they can expect from the different ones, and they have different strengths.
Sherry's just put in, hundreds of them sounds like a crowd of people yelling at you, which is what we were talking about. Yeah, it's kind of the way it's portrayed in films, isn't it? When people are going mad, it's like this cacophony of voices in their head, you know.
Yeah, or like you know, an angry crowd threatening.
Yeah.
Hey, Sherry, jump in anytime.
Yeah, she's putting some good points in.
Yeah, jump in anytime. So I went on and asked this guy, I said, did they ever do anything similar where they showed you they had supernatural powers at other times? He said, oh yes, they always knew where the drugs were. He said, since age 12, they would tell me where I could find drugs. Once I was living in San Diego, I said, here's that story. He said, once when I was living in San Diego and was strung out on cocaine, they told me to take all my money, about $250, find 2 burlap bags, fill my gas tank, and drive to Oregon. They told me they knew where there was several new sesame marijuana farms. And he trusted them. You know, so he said, I followed their directions and found 4 large pot farms in 2 weeks. I followed their directions step by step all the way up to Oregon and until I found a dirt road. Then they told me to turn left on the dirt road, and I did. I went up the dirt road for over 20 miles until it dead ended and turned into a trail that went up into the mountains. When the road ended, I asked them, well, what now? They told me, well, take the burlap bags and head up the trail. He said he walked for about 4 hours. I said, you never got lost? He said, no, never. He said, I hiked for hours, and they told me step by step where to go. When I got up there, I cut the best part of the healthiest plants and filled the gunny sacks and hauled them down the mountain. And I said, were you never there before? He said, never. And how far was the pot field from where you started off in Southern California? I said, 1,500 miles. So here these voices are directing him for 1,500 miles to this pot field in the mountains of Oregon. And I said, and you just took off without enough money to pay for gas to get back, and you trusted the voices enough to do that? He said, yes, I had just enough money at the time to buy gas to get up there. I asked him, well, what did you do after you cut the pot and filled the sacks? He said, I asked the voices, well, what do I do now? They told me where a park was that I could go sell the pot. And I asked him, and there was a park where they told you there would be one, and people came to buy the stuff? He said, yeah. I said, what'd you do after you sold the marijuana? He said, well, we went fishing. When he says we, he means human voices. And so I'm sitting here listening to this, and like, this guy's got to be shitting me.
Yeah, like demonic entities all of a sudden.
With my hand
in angling, yeah.
So I'm like trying to, you know, this has happened to me a lot of times. It's like, what? But you look at him, and I'm like studying his face to see if there was a cracked smile, and whether, you know, I could feel the deception. I felt none, you know. So he goes, well, we went fishing for 3 or 4 weeks. He said, I bought a bunch of prostitutes and all the cocaine I could handle. I said, we went fishing on the Columbia River. The voices were fishermen. They like to fish. And I'm sitting there going, what the frick is this kid? What? You know, and I'm going, you're shitting me. He goes, no, I'm telling you the truth. I mean, then he was straight faced. He said there were a bunch of fishermen out there on the river, but nobody was catching anything except me. He said the voices told me where to throw my lure and when the hole was fished out. They told me when and where to move. I was the only one on the river catching any fish that day. And I said, they liked it fishing? And he goes, oh yeah, they were fishing. They loved it. I'm like, my head's going, "Arr!" And they kept saying, oh, just one more cast. He said, throw your lure over there, over here. And he said, we caught tons of fish. We had hit all the major rivers over a period of weeks. And I said, so it was just you and the guys, your fishing buddies. He said, yeah, we drank lots of beer. We ate well. We went to a bunch of shows, paid a lot for prostitutes, and bought a lot of cocaine. We had a great time. He loved it. So what was happening? He was slowly being destroyed. He was strung out on cocaine. The voices told him that if he went up there again, they were onto him. They would kill him. So that comes up later. He said, I asked, how come you didn't stay up there and keep living the high life? He said, the last time I ran out of money, I was going to go up to the mountain to cut more marijuana to sell. The voices stopped me and said, oh no, you can't go up there again. I said, why not? Said, because people whose fields we raided were up there waiting, and the police are looking for you down here at the park. You can't keep doing this stuff forever. You have to stop at some point. I asked him, and they actually would tell you to stop? He said, oh yeah, they would tell me when it was time to leave. They told me it was time to pack up and head back to San Diego. They said, you've had your fun, now let's get out of here. It's time to leave. I asked, did they ever do anything like that before? He said, oh yeah, they were great hunting buddies. They would tell me where to go to find deer, and the deer would come. So this kind of stuff isn't just from one guy. I mean, it's from scores of different schizophrenics.
Yes.
So
they have an overview which is much wider than people would realize. In other words, they, as we were just saying, are not dimensional. They are other dimensional. Therefore, time and space does not apply to them, which is a very important point.
There is no cause and effect there. It's all an energetic universe, and it plays by different rules.
Somebody's just put into chat, is the sixth sense, are they voices? Well, no, that's an intuitive response to a personal situation. That's a totally different thing, I think. What do you think about that?
Intuition?
No, the sixth sense, the ability to be able to intuit a situation which may be negative or something that's going to happen. The sixth sense is when you get a gut feeling about something. I think that's totally different, personally. That's my view on it.
Yeah, I think so. Especially if it's something that you should stay away from, because these things they're going to want to direct you into something that's going to cause you problems. Their main purpose is to generate that negative emotional energy which they feed off. If they could care about you less.
So anything that takes you into a good place is generally, I would say, nothing to do with them. Yeah.
So this guy ended up in prison eventually, and locked up for a long time.
I don't know what Dave's put intuition, then mark, exclamation mark, question. I don't know what that means, because we just said that we're talking about basically intuition is your ability internally to be able to differentiate whether something is good or bad, or there is something going on. What is this situation about? That is your inner ability, which can be developed through awareness. Because a lot of people don't have intuition. They don't know what it is. They just react to things. But a lot of this is about self-awareness. If you're self-aware, then these things can't get in. These things get in through the gaps in the awareness, from my understanding of it, which would be the direct introduction to the next question was, does drinking spirits open you up to them? Of course it does. Because one, it weakens you, it takes away your inhibition, but therefore also a big chunk of your awareness. So obviously they can get in, because what do people do when they get drunk? They make mistakes, they fall over, they get into arguments.
And their personality changes. The personality completely changes. They're not the same person.
Yeah. And in some people it's so radical. I mean, we've all got friends that are so allergic to drink that whenever they go out getting drunk, they get into trouble, they don't remember it, and this is basically opening yourself up to these negative influences. Yeah.
Yeah, I've talked to patients that got drunk on their butts and woke up in another city. They in a completely drunken state. They drove themselves.
Blackouts is where they get in, isn't it? Once you start blacking out, then you don't remember what you've done. And that's exactly what we were talking about earlier on with the case that I was talking to you about over the years, and also your experiences. Yeah, they don't remember. People don't remember them.
Yeah, they don't remember anything. It's like, well, how did I get here? I talked to one guy. He woke up with blood on his front bumper. He didn't know whether he hit a person or an animal.
Yes. Sherry's just put in, everyone has intuition. Few know what it is, and even fewer recognise it. That takes practice before you know the difference between intuition and thoughts. That's a very good point, and that sums up exactly what we were trying to say. Thanks, Sherry. Thank you.
Yeah, and you have to start trusting your intuition instead of just blowing it off. When you get a feeling that, well, I shouldn't be doing this, or I shouldn't get on that plane, or I really shouldn't go to the movies or go shopping right now, trust it. It takes some practice.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, an interesting aside is that when that King's Cross fire was on, I was in a pub, and we were going to go somewhere just when because quite a few people were killed in the King's Cross fire. It was a long time ago, in the late 80s, I think. And we were just in the pub and said, no, don't go yet. Give it another half an hour. And then there's loads of things that have happened to me. A very serious car crash could have happened, and lots of other things. These things happen, but I think people may be not aware of them. But I think when you develop this extra awareness, you know, and I've always warned people, I said, that person is wrong, right? Don't get involved with them. And 6 months down the line, you go, yeah, you were right. You were right. And I've always been right about it. And that's not because that you've got some special power. It's because you're just slightly tuning in more. You're just actually using what you've been given, basically.
Well, that was critical working in the prison, too. You had to be able to ferret out who was playing a game on your head and who wasn't. And I was pretty good at that. But then when I started getting stuff